That's awesome, because we won't even be close. When we achieve legalization, probably, just like it's happening everywhere that we've had medical laws, more people will be arrested than ever before. Why? Because they will feel that the law is protecting them. Okay? So that's what happens. We pass a law, and people that were ordinarily minding their own business, living in the shadows, not ruffling any feathers, all of a sudden feel protected. So we go and get our state cards, and we go and talk to our lawyers, and we go and do things, feeling that we're protected. When in fact, law enforcement and judges and hell, our attorney general for that matter, feels that the very things that we feel we're protecting, we're actually violating the law. Okay? So there is still hundreds of courtrooms in California, and that's not an exaggeration, where they feel that you cannot exchange money for pot on any level, no matter what anybody says. Sorry, that's selling drugs. And people are getting arrested, and they're getting charged, and they're getting thrown in jail, and they're getting hit with bail. How many of you guys realize that for the purpose of bail, you are considered guilty of the charges that are given to you? Anybody? Well, aware of that? So all they have to do is say, I'm charging you with illegal cultivation, illegal possession with intent to sell, sale, transportation, conspiracy to do all those things, and they'll set the bail accordingly. So when they hit me with a bail that was higher than people who had committed violent crimes. There were people that were famous, that were accused of murder, manslaughter, rape, really terrible, horrible crimes, and they were given a lesser bail than I was. So that's one of the things that they can do. No matter who you are, no matter how protected you are, no matter how you're doing it right, I've heard it all, seen it all, I did it all. And I ended up getting hit just like so many other people. So, what happens? You get arrested, you get thrown in jail, hopefully you bail out. I see a couple of people here that have recently bailed out, which is a really good thing. No matter what, you can't stay in jail. No matter what they do, no matter what it is, you can't fight your case from jail. It's the worst thing. You've got to get out no matter what, at any cost. I don't care if you got to sell your soul to the devil. You got to get out of jail because you can't do any good in there. You can't fight your case. You'll never get any information about your case. Nothing. So you got to get out. Then you go to court and you answer charges. How many of you guys have sat in a courtroom for a pot case? A few? Okay, I'm here to teach that, hopefully. I've sat in over 300 hearings in the last 6 years. 150 of them were mine, but every single time I go, including yesterday, I see something I've never seen before. Every single time. There's never been one hearing except for a little arraignment or something, something where nothing actually happens, procedural based. But any time that there's a preliminary hearing, a motion hearing, or any element of trial, every single time I see something that not only have I not seen before, but I can barely believe. Okay? There are so many miscarriages of justice that happen inside of our own courtrooms. And people come to me all the time, oh, all you gotta do is this. Just say you're this and do that. Go to court and see what actually happens. Because all those people that think that that's the case end up in jail. You know, they can toss you in for contempt for nothing. So that's what they do to people who think they're big shots and they know the law and the Constitution and all that. The Constitution doesn't have a whole lot of bearing in court. Which it should, but it doesn't. So, you go into court, and what's the first thing you notice? You notice that everybody on the other side of that bar, you guys know what the bar is? The bar is actually a physical barrier between the gallery and the other side of court, where the judge sits and the lawyers sit. That's why you have to pass the bar. Literally, you have to go past the bar. It's a literal physical barrier. Well, everybody that's on that side of the bar, except for very few exceptions of paid attorneys, are paid by the government. Okay? So all the cops that come in and testify, the judge, the court clerk, the bailiffs, oftentimes many of them, the prosecutor and their assistants, and all the public defenders and their assistants. They're all paid by the same people. They all work together every single day. And then there's you, and hopefully an attorney. And if you're really lucky, maybe a couple of people standing there with you. Because you want to talk about an ominous feeling of walking in there knowing that every damn thing's against you. It is. Okay, these guys, literally over 90% of all cases are settled in plea deals. Do you realize what that means? That means people say, I admit that I'm guilty of something. Usually, they charge you with 10 things, and they say, well, we're going to make you a great deal, and we're going to wipe all these away. You're just going to take down one, and we'll give you 3 years probation. It's typically what they do. And people are like, oh, I don't want to go to jail. And if you don't do it, we're going after you 7 years, 10 years. They threaten me with 12 years. Okay? You go take it to trial, that's all gloves are off. You don't get any deal, you don't get any special treatment. So most people, and literally that's over 90% of the people, they take that deal. Okay? Well, what does that say? That says, I admit that I'm guilty of a crime, number one, and I waive my 4th and 5th and 8th Amendment rights, so I can, no appeal, no due process, no right to question my accuser, I give up my right to illegal search and seizure. No more Constitution for me for 3 years. Okay? Now, how many people do you think survived those 3 years without getting violated? They'll spend a little time in jail and talk to the people in jail. And they'll tell you, more than half the people in jail are in their own violations. So it's a slippery slope, it's a trick. And most people fall for it. Occasionally, some people will just shut up and be a good little boy or girl, and they'll go move somewhere else, and they'll just sit there and live in fear. I've seen it. I've seen that happen too. That's what normally happens. But every once in a while, somebody will say, wait a minute. I didn't do anything wrong. I'm an American. I have a constitutional right to all these things that they're trying to take away from me. And I'm going to fight for it. And when that happens, if we can rally people together to sit in court, it literally shifts the dynamic of that. It literally takes that feeling of everybody over in this side of the court is against me and there's nobody standing to me. And literally, I've walked into court with 50 people before, 100 people, 5 people, 2 people. It doesn't even really matter how many. If there's some people there, the whole dynamic shifts. And the court looks at you. What are you guys doing here? They don't even understand why we're here. Bailiffs ask all the time, why are you here? We're here to show support for this person. Huh? Nobody does that. Why? Well, because nobody's going to support a guy charged with burglary. Nobody's going to support a guy charged with assault. Nobody's going to support a guy charged with, you name it. But running a plant, possessing a plant, transporting a plant, even selling a plant, the big thing that everybody freaks out on? Are you kidding me? We should be filling these courtrooms every single time. And when we do, it makes a difference. Now I'm here to tell you, I would not be free today if it wasn't for all the court support that was at my trial 2 years ago. Because I wouldn't have gotten all those declarations to come in when we submitted that motion, and that judge would not have recused himself, and I would have never had a chance to overturn that jury verdict. And I would have been sentenced, and I would be sitting in prison today. But directly because of all the people that did come to court, and the effect that that had on that courtroom, and all of the corruption that was exposed, the newspaper articles that came out, and literally it turned the Long Beach court, one of the most corrupt courts in California, and maybe America, It literally turned it upside down, and the judge that railroaded me not only stepped down, but he's retired.
Oh, did he?
He's gone. Okay?
He was a bad apple.
He was a bad apple, and he is not a judge anymore because of my case and all of the support that was there. He did not, we filed a judicial complaint. He did not face it. So, you bet. So that is what can happen with court support. Here's the other thing that can happen. When you hear about a case and somebody's willing to stand up and the community rallies together around that person as the warrior they are, as the hero they are, and I'm not patting myself on the back, but everybody else who has stood up. And they'll do it if they feel they'll get some support from the community. A lot easier than if they didn't. I guarantee you, I've walked into the room empty before, and I've walked into the room full before. And I can assure you that the only thing that kept me going was knowing that I had support. And I mean, I would have done it anyways because I'm crazy, but I wouldn't have had the confidence that I had that somehow I'm going to come out of this okay. And I know, here's the kicker. The court system is not designed to run trials. They do a small amount of trials, and if even 50% more people today took their case to trial than do, which is hundreds of cases, not thousands or millions, but hundreds, it would choke that court system. And the judges at certain points have the ability to dismiss charges. And when you're going up, one of the first things you do is what's called a preliminary hearing. And this is where they put their case on, and if you're lucky, you get to have your case. In my case, they didn't allow me to testify at my prelim. And then the judge decides if there's enough evidence to move forward to trial. And I've seen cases where we had tremendous support. Katrina Falvo was one. And there was a couple of cases up in Sacramento area where there was tremendous support, and their case was weak, as they normally are. And the judge looked and took note of all the community support and the weakness of the case and whatever strength there was of the defendant and dismissed the case.
Never happened.
And it seldom happens, but it's only happened in the cases I've seen where there was support. It makes a difference.
Yes, one Katrina's case.
Katrina Falvo. It was clearly the support of the community.
Yeah, Judge Galvin said, I'm not here all the time. I come from a criminal court, and that woman is not a criminal.
Exactly.
That's what he said.
And criminals don't get people to stand up for them. They just don't. Okay. Exactly. So that's one point in which it's hugely important. The second point is, of course, during a jury trial. Now, if anybody thinks that if you take a case to trial, you're going to be facing a jury of your peers, again, please come to court. Please. I want to teach you some things. Watch a jury get selected, and watch all of us who would never convict somebody for pot say, I would never convict somebody for pot, and get thrown off the jury, because that's what we do. We don't have to. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But we do. Who's left? The people that say, I can follow your instructions, and I will take the law as you give it to me, and do what you say. And many times we do get convicted unfairly. And that's what happened to me. But again, we got that overturned. The third time that is potentially important is if, in the worst case scenario, somebody does get convicted or even does take a plea deal. Remember, if you get in a situation like this, they're going to offer you a plea deal from the very beginning. And most people are like, okay. We can take your case all the way to the last day. You're picking a jury and probably say, all right, never mind. I'll take your deal. And you'll get that deal. So sometime during the process, if you don't wait until the very end, even if you were planning on taking the deal, you've missed at least 2 opportunities to have your case dismissed. Deal dismissed. I don't know. I mean, think about this. This isn't rocket science. Take it all the way, the very, very end. If you don't have what it takes to stay in, go out at the last second. You can do that. But in the worst case scenario, you are sentenced. This is the last time where support can have a huge factor. Even in a deal, they'll offer you something. They'll say, well, we're going to offer you 3 years probation and blah, blah, blah. And then ultimately the judge decides your sentence. And there's going to play all kinds of factors. One's going to be a probation report. One's going to be the prosecutor's report. One's going to be whatever your past history is. One's going to be whatever references that you bring, whatever bit of community support, letters of support that say, hey, this is a good guy. People that bring in a lot of those, and a lot of people that are willing to stand up and testify, sometimes they allow it, can affect sentencing. Ronnie Knowles is a perfect situation where he had a federal case. He ended up taking a plea deal because in federal court, it's really the madmen that stand up, and I respect them as much as, those are the people we're writing letters to. These are the guys with more stones than, everybody in this room put together, because they're standing up to the federal law without a chance in hell, hoping that one juror is going to say not guilty, and it has never happened yet. But meanwhile, at that sentencing hearing, we packed that courtroom, and we packed it, and it was overflowing. And that judge looked up and looked around at us, and she said, wow, I think I'm going to give it a couple weeks to think on it. And she continued the case for 2 weeks. And ultimately, she returned a sentence that was about as light as she could have given. And Ronnie didn't have to do prison time. And he had to do house arrest and raise some money, but it could have been bad. He was facing 10-year mandatory minimum had he actually faced the charges that he was charged with. So another case of court support that can have a huge effect.